Set! Welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast, where we discuss dynasty strategy, rankings, and all things NFL. So get ready to geek out on fantasy football with your host, Rich Dotson.
And welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast Injury Edition. I'm Rich Dotson. He's Matt O'Hara.
Hey, how's it going, Rich?
Oh, it's going pretty good here. Just got back and, from a long weekend away, which was nice to do. You stopped by for a day, which was also a great pleasure. And we got through the whole weekend without any crazy injuries again. Like, it started off so horrific, and these last 2 weeks have been pretty splendid.
Yeah, no, I feel like, we mentioned it before and kind of even when they were happening early in the season, we were like, this is kind of, hopefully this will calm down once the season gets going. And it has. So that's great. That either the guys that were going to get injured are already gone or, their bodies are starting to get finally used to these violent collisions that are happening week in and week out.
Yeah, and the worst player that we saw, I mean, it was good news on Rashee Rice. Like, we don't even know if he's going to be out for the whole year now. Like, he might just be out for the rest of the fantasy season, which might as well be the whole year. But we can get him back right before the playoffs start, possibly, and beyond, which would be great.
Yeah, so Kansas City's hopeful that it'll be closer to a 6 to 8 week injury as opposed to the season-long stuff. But they're literally going in to scope him, I think, today and check out to see what the damage is in there. So
we'll stay tuned to that.
There must have been yeah, exactly. So something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and then, obviously everything still stays the same there. Travis Kelce, we saw finally get a little boost to him. Xavier Worthy wasn't. We'll see how he's used tonight because they play on Monday night football tonight. So it's going to be, and with the addition of Kareem Hunt, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is now off the PUP list as well. So it's going to be interesting to see the dynamic without Rashee Rice, which obviously, again, everything pushes towards Travis Kelce. And it looks like Rashee Rice is the reason why Travis Kelce has slowly entered the coffin. We talked about it early on, like when I was saying my biggest concern with Travis Kelce after week one was why it was a sell, because it was a continuation over from last year. And it looks like Rashee Rice was taking over all that stuff over the middle, like all that short stuff, all the stuff over the middle. And that's where Travis Kelce really eats. So interesting dynamic. Obviously good news if you own Rashee Rice, not to have him out for the year or have to recoup and come back and build himself back up for next year as well. So she hit the ground running. What else do we have on the list here though?
All right. Yeah. Let's start off with quarterbacks, like we normally do here. Aaron Rodgers had a low ankle sprain that he was basically playing through for that game in London there. So, I mean, I don't know that it's going to have any sort of big time effect, but it's a long plane ride back from that side of the pond. So who knows what kind of swelling that he could kind of incur on the way home. Something to monitor. Tyrod Taylor is his direct backup. So if you have any concerns or if Aaron Rodgers is your only guy you're relying on, it might be smart to go get Tyrod Taylor. I doubt at this point anyone's really relying on Aaron Rodgers to be the only guy on their team. So if he's your second guy in Superflex, same thing applies. Maybe go out and get Tyrod if he's available out there on your waiver wire.
Yeah, all reports are this is a minor ankle sprain. He should be back soon. So doesn't seem like there's anything to fret here. Obviously came out slinging through every single ball to Garrett Wilson.
22 targets.
Yeah.
Is that what it was?
Yeah. And he caught 12 for 100 yards. Just when if you read it, dude, Garrett Wilson got 22 targets. Like, wow, he probably had a monster game. You're like, nah, just 12 catches for 100 yards, which is still great in PPR, but that's still depressing at the same time.
That connection is not there yet. And if you watch the game, like I did, it seems frustrating, like that they're not on the same page quite yet. So we'll see how this kind of progresses as the year goes on. Obviously, Devontae Adams still that thing's kind of lingering out there. Obviously there'd be an instant connection with Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers. And it's not, I don't want to make it sound like it's just Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson too. I feel like even Mike Williams there and Aaron Rodgers aren't on the same page at times. So it would have been probably helpful for Aaron Rodgers to do a little bit more stuff in the offseason this year than he chose to do. But
so I'm going to Egypt on retreats.
Yeah, then he could have ironed this stuff out in the offseason instead of during the first month of the season. But whatever, man. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers. I feel like that was kind of his MO anyway. And then last year was kind of the weird one when he came in and did everything in the offseason, and then he up and ruptured his Achilles in the first 4 plays of the season. So maybe he was like, you know what, I'm going back to my regular routine. We'll figure this out.
It kind of makes sense too. Why then, like Allen Lazard's kind of like playing at a startable level in fantasy football. We'll see how that goes. Obviously, if Devontae Adams goes there, and that's the question you have to ask yourself. Like Devontae Adams right now he said he wants to go either to Saints, obviously with Derek Carr, or he wants to go to the Jets with Aaron Rodgers. And it sounds like it's gonna be one of the things where Devontae Adams kind of gets what he wants. Otherwise, that hamstring injury just might linger a little bit longer than he has. So I think the biggest worry here is obviously he goes to Saints. All that does is really boost Derek Carr. I don't think it would really crush Chris Olave too much. Maybe it might eat into Rashid Shaheed a little bit or all of them. But like with the Jets, your biggest concern would be like he has such a good rapport going with Allen Lazard. Like, what does that do? Like, what does that do for Garrett Wilson? Instead of seeing those 22 targets at a very not efficient level, does that just plummet Garrett Wilson to like a wide receiver 3?
I think it would, unfortunately, because for the exact same reason you said, Allen Lazard's already got that kind of rapport with Aaron Rodgers going, and obviously Devontae Adams would too. So those would be his top 2 targets, I feel like, on most plays, and Garrett Wilson would then have to kind of be fighting for scraps there a little bit. So that would be a tough one.
And it makes him a very interesting dynasty value because, this is somebody comes in as like a top 7, top 8 over fantasy football receiver or dynasty receiver, hasn't really put out the output to, validate that ranking or overall draft status. So, and for me, like, I know I've put a lot of offers out there for Garrett Wilson because he has dipped in value and kind of like seeing where people stand on him. And there's no dip in perceived value. Like everybody's still home to long term, but like no certainty at quarterback. If they bring in Devontae Adams, I mean, we talked about it before about like where does that put him and where do you value him long term?
No, I mean I still like the player long term. And either way, this Aaron Rodgers experiment here with the Jets is going to be a short-term thing either way. And I've always seen it like that. So I think that's probably why I'm sure a lot of other people are also viewing it that way. That's probably why his perceived value hasn't gone down, even though him and Aaron Rodgers haven't got off to the best start. But to get to the core of it, is my opinion of Garrett Wilson going down? It actually kind of is a little bit. It's starting to slip a bit for me. So, I mean, we'll see how far it goes. But if Devontae Adams gets traded to the Jets, I think that's when the perceived value of Garrett Wilson will then dip because people will see that, oh, man, he's probably going to have to either wait for Aaron Rodgers just to retire or for his contract to run out there with the Jets and him get another opportunity somewhere to kind of have a big spike in value. So that's when it might be a good time to go out and buy him, to be honest. So, I do think he'll have long-term value regardless.
Yeah. Listen, I like to play. He's only 24 years old, 2 months, but like the counter move with there, because then if you go, okay, you got the rest of this year, which is a whole year, and say they bring him back again, like Adams, say you get the rest of Adams' deal, it's a 2-year deal, and Rodgers comes back for 2 years. That's 2 more years you have to go of Garrett Wilson's suppressed value at current ADP. Yes, could he dip there afterwards? But like, is that the move to pivot? Like, and here's an example, Matt. Like some player, I don't even think you could. Do you think you could pivot like from Garrett Wilson to Nico Collins, or the Nico Collins owner just tell you like, nah, man, I'm good. Which is like if we would have said that 6 months ago, it would have been a snap accept plus.
Yeah. It's a tough one, man. I mean, I doubt anyone is going to, at this point, make that move. I don't think anyone that has Nico Collins would accept a Garrett Wilson trade straight up, unless they're just like a big time Ohio State homer or something like. I mean, like you could run into it in the correct scenario, but for the most part, I don't think anyone would do that because Nico's just falling out.
I'm gonna give you 2 names, and we'll move on to the next injury here for Garrett Wilson. If I offer to do this straight up, would you take it? Mm-hmm. And one player is pretty much the same age and one's a year younger. The one that's a year younger is Drake London.
I wouldn't, because I like Garrett Wilson more. I know Drake London is coming off a big time monster game there on Thursday night, but I've never been overly excited, and I don't know that production is going to be there week in and week out.
Okay, and I knew that you weren't a huge fan. And here's one that would probably surprise you, but a name that I've been on for a while that's had an amazing catch this past weekend from amazing throw from Jordan Love.
Yes, I would.
Jayden Reed.
Yes, I would.
Yeah,
I moved him up accordingly. I did after this weekend's game.
Yeah, and that's when you'd flip Garrett Wilson straight up for Jayden Reed, and some people are like, wow, that's, and like you might still and that's the thing, man. And my point is about getting about that, Matt, because I would too. Is like, I think that we're inching closer until that trade happens. Where like right now you might be able to get plus, for Jayden Reed for Garrett Wilson. I want to see if you would do it straight up, because like if I can get like Jayden Reed in like a second and like a third and 27 for like Garrett Wilson, like I would do that as well.
100%, man. That's winning right there in Dynasty, in my opinion, because you're really getting out from underneath a name and getting the game. You know what I mean? And on top of it.
I like that. Put that on a shirt. Put that on a shirt. Getting out from under a name and getting it in a game. Wow. Wow, that is good. We got to use that on the main podcast. I got to remind me about that. That is so good. What a saying. Is that your own saying, or did you steal that from somebody?
I just came up with that in my brain just now.
Wow, getting out from under their name and getting in the game. Wow, dude, that's a forever. I love when these pop up. That's a forever usage. You know, mine's an overpay today is underpay tomorrow, and hashtag 2 to 3 year window. Yours is now got to be get out from under their name and get in the game, son.
In the game, come on.
Because dude, in Dynasty, that fits on so many different levels, right? Like the name can hold you back so much because of a name. When the game is out there scoring points. Oh, I love that so much. That's so good. Best thing you ever said in 11 years. Besides Justin Jefferson was your wide receiver one. Oh,
hey man, they happen every once in a while. I'll take them when I can get them.
Right, next on the list.
Yeah, moving on to the next one. Josh Allen went down with he was kind of a funky play where he was evading a sack. And really, it was his head that hit the ground that caused all the stir. He went to the side into the tent and basically said that he rolled his ankle, but really he clunked his head pretty hard. So this is one of those things where he's got a rolled ankle, quote unquote. And then what I'm more concerned about is the fact that concussion syndromes can kind of pop up after the fact. So we'll see how this week goes, see how his participation is. I hope he doesn't miss a game, obviously. If he does, it's Mitch Trubisky. He's going to be the starter, and that's going to be a bit of a train wreck. But if I wouldn't think that the rolled ankle is anything, because he came back and played on it and everything was fine. I would hope that the concussion symptoms just stay away and none of that stuff pops up. So obviously big time impact on that whole team if he's out. I mean, everyone's going to be downgraded if Mitch Trubisky's throwing the ball and Josh Allen's not.
Yeah, shout out to the former Mentor Cardinal, Mitch Trubisky. Love you, kid. But yeah, NFL-wise,
it's a step down from Josh Allen. It just is.
It's like jumping off a cliff. Yes, there's water down below, and you feel good, but you don't know what's underneath that water.
That's right. All right, so moving on to the running back position, Devon Achane went down with a concussion as well. But the good news here is week 6 bye. So next week they're going to be off anyway. So the chances of him being back for week 7 are pretty good, unless this is a really severe concussion. And obviously, Bright came in and did really well, and Raheem Mostert is back too. So I would look for some sort of combo of those two guys to fill in if Achane was to miss any time. But
yeah, and what your hope is, like, because Jalen Wright looked good, Raheem Mostert had a solid game, that those guys can actually put Devon Achane back up to his big yardage game. Obviously, they're still missing Tua, but you're right. Every time you get a concussion, you missed him up following week 99% of the time. So the fact that he's going in a bye week actually like saves you a week. Like, never a good time to get a concussion, but this is the perfect time for Devon Achane, who's really slipped these last couple of weeks. Again, the whole offense without Tua seems to be a complete disaster when it comes to fantasy football. I mean, Tyreek Hill is barely getting you double digits. Jalen Waddle is not even barely usable, and even Achane has been, from a fantasy aspect, just bad. So desperately waiting here to get Tua back, or even a possible quarterback trade of like to the worst quarterback in the league, Russell Wilson, might make this better. So interested to keep following Miami closely.
Yeah, obviously the Tua situation is what I'm really interested to see if this this is the last week. You know what I mean? Like this bye week coming up is his last week, and he's able to practice during the bye at all. That would be really encouraging. I know he's symptom free, so we'll see what kind of participation we get out of him in the bye week. Moving on to the next one, Aaron Jones, another guy that's on bye in week 6, which is nice. Had a hip injury that he couldn't even finish like the second quarter, basically, of that game. Ty Chandler and Myles Gaskin kind of picked up the slack there, and I would assume will pick up the slack if Aaron Jones isn't able to go coming out of the bye in week 7. I think this is another one that we're going to know more about once the injury reports come out. I think they're still, going to MRI that thing, and I'm sure some of those results will be coming out here in the next day or two. But nothing crazy here. Ty Chandler's going to be the guy. Gaskins will come in and spell him, and that's kind of how that one I think will play out with Aaron Jones out.
Yeah, perfect bye week because you'd have missed this week no matter what, probably anyways with the hamstring. And I know some people were saying the hip, but like you got to remember he strained his hamstring in week 2, and he had to come out. And again, that's what we always get worried about, these hamstrings. They're not just like toss away. It's nothing come back the following week. There's such high re-injury risk there. So for him to get this bye week and have 2 weeks off, hopefully he can just rest the whole thing and get treatment as he sees fit, because the offense does look significantly worse without Aaron Jones out there. The offense does not look as good. He looks like he's a very integral part about that offense. Just like Houston can use Joe Mixon back, the Vikings do need Aaron Jones to continue their success.
No doubt about it. Zach Moss got ahead. He picked up an ankle injury in this game. And obviously Chase Brown is the direct beneficiary there. Travion Williams, I don't think has taken a snap on offense yet this season, and he would also be a guy that was getting some action. But Chase Brown basically finished up the fourth quarter, last drive of the fourth quarter, and into overtime because Zach Moss wasn't able to go towards the end of that game. Not a huge impact. Zach Moss hasn't been doing a ton anyway. He's been kind of usable here and there.
Touchdowns.
Yeah, right. He's a touchdown dependent guy that has been semi-usable, but I think this kind of unmuddies the water. You probably start Chase Brown if Zach Moss is out because he'll get the workload. I think that would that you would need, and he's always good for breaking a run or two a game as well. So
yeah, again, from my suggestion, from going back to college tape and everything I've seen the pros, the fact that we're in the bye weeks, people are going to be needing running backs. People need running backs no matter what. I would really look to move Chase Brown this week. I mean, even watching him run, he's still not breaking tackles. He's still not he's not in between the tackle runner. He's more of a timeshare catch the football kind of guy, and he's just one stud away from just disappearing completely. And with how strong next year's running back class is, I would look for the Bengals to draft a guy and kind of move on here. And there's nothing Chase Brown shows me on tape that shows me he's a long-term answer as a running back position for fantasy football. So if there's a window that opens at all where I could somehow get a first for Chase Brown, right? Like, if you go off his stats last year or somebody puts a game together this week, I would actively be looking to move Chase Brown off my roster for any kind of long-term upside that there is, because he's not a championship caliber player. He's a fill-in player. And honestly, guys like Chase Brown are a dime a dozen, right? You mentioned Aaron Jones. Like, you easily get Ty Chandler, and Ty Chandler could outproduce from a fantasy football aspect. Chase Brown will give you equal value. And the price points on both of those are so drastically different. To go in there, I mean, you get a guy like Darway Ogunbowale off your waiver wire in Houston, who put up over double-digit points last week to still give you that Chase Brown production. Those guys are very, very obtainable, whether it be through trade, waiver wire pickups, stashes. If you listen to the podcast, the two biggest running backs that I was on outside those top four were Ray Davis and Tyrone Tracy. Tyrone Tracy came out, didn't have a negative play yesterday, looked really good thanks to that Eric Gray fumble at the goal line, which I thought he was in for a touchdown. I thought it was a touchdown. I thought it was very unfair to give him that fumble. I thought they're going to reverse it, but he got benched after that, and Tyrone Tracy came in and looked really good. So there's running backs out there to go ahead and get, and none of them will get you the return that Chase Brown. Like, maybe Tyrone Tracy today after that big game could kind of give you a nice return after a day, but that's the hot seat, quick react, what just happened crowd. And I think the same thing can be in effect for Chase Brown. Like, maybe you probably can't get a first, but there might be something you could throw on top of there, whether it be like Chase Brown in a third for a first, whatever I could do to get in there. I would change. And we were joking around the other day, like how we're just desperately trying to get as much 2027 draft picks as possible now, because how strong that class is going to be. Like I would take, hey man, like I'll give you my third next year in Chase Brown. Just give me your 2027 first, if that's what it takes. Like if that's what it takes, I'd be willing to do that. So again, my opinion is I would desperately be trying to move Chase Brown if I had a single share after the Zach Moss news.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. I think he's a prime candidate. I don't know that you'll sniff a first round draft pick for him, but probably I mean, I would take a second round draft pick for him, honestly.
Yeah, me too.
So, anything above that price point, and I'd feel pretty good about it.
And that's what I meant to say. Like, I would be trying to add on to see what I could just get into the first. Like, honestly, Matt, even if I was a contender, like, hey, I'll throw you my second this year. If I was a contender for your 27 first in 2025, when, you know what I mean? Like something on those lines, just to make sure I get into that draft class and get much capital as possible to try and put myself in position. Again, I know it's a lot could change from now to then, but that Ryan Williams and Jeremiah Smith 1-2 punch seems like something I'm desperately going to try to start playing ahead now to get my piece of that if I can.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. Studs. But moving on, Ramondre Stevenson, he wasn't able to finish the game. He left and did not return with a knee injury. Antonio Gibson had the quote unquote, we'll air quote that one, start. But Ramondre Stevenson was still worked in there. If he's to miss any time, it'll be Antonio Gibson and JaMychal Hasty, that kind of the 1-2 punch there, with Antonio Gibson, I would think, getting the majority of that work.
Wasn't Ramondre like benched like for the first series or whatever, like for some like
it was for fumbling. No, he's been fumbling throughout the first 4 days, so they gave Antonio Gibson the start.
Okay.
But that was like the air quote start, you know what I mean? Like ceremonial. Get out there, you're the starter. They still ended up splitting carries and stuff like that.
I was out there pounding Palomas this weekend, so I'm still catching up.
No, I get it, man.
I got to try baseball today at 4 p.m., so it's not a lot to go, which goes right into Monday Night Football. It's a busy sports weekend. I don't have the Browns, but I got the Tribe, so I'm all set.
Yes, we got something anyway. All right, moving on to the wide receiver position. Nico Collins had a nice game, but did pull up lame with a hamstring injury. It's believed to be mild, and he's more of the day-to-day variety than like the week-to-week hamstring variety, but it's still a hamstring. So, this is very, I don't want to call it likely, but it could be a week where he misses right here in week 6. Obviously, Tank Dell would be the guy to kind of maybe step up immediately. Xavier Hutchinson is probably a more one-for-one body type replacement for Nico Collins. And both those guys saw a little bump in action when Nico went out.
And Diggs would slide into the number 1 read role there. And didn't Nico have like something earlier with the hamstring, like earlier in the year too? Like, isn't this like, didn't he like re-aggravate it?
Let me see here. I don't see him on week 1, maybe in the preseason. Yeah, I don't know.
I thought I saw something that was like a re-aggravation of it. I could be wrong, but yeah, those hamstrings, you never know. Like you really would just hope they just rest them for the week and skip a week just so you don't make it worse. But definitely a situation to monitor and a massive, massive loss to anybody in their lineup.
Yep, no doubt about it. I don't see anything. I just looked through the other weeks. I didn't see another hamstring issue, but it's not to say that it didn't happen earlier in the preseason before we started this show. So it's a possible. The last one on the list here is my guy, Xavier Legette, had to leave the game due to a shoulder issue. He basically came out and said that it's just a little bit banged up and he expects to be ready to play next week's game. So there shouldn't be much of a ramification. If there was, it would be Jonathan Mingo that kind of steps into his role with David Moore and Jalen Cooker as guys that might get a little bit of a bump as well behind him. But I would expect Xavier Legette to kind of fight through this. He's tough. He's strong. He can do it.
Got that country strength.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So that's it, man.
That's it.
That's thankfully, like we said, it wasn't a very bad week. So
I enjoy these episodes.
Yeah, hopefully Monday is similar. Obviously, if there are any Monday night issues, we will talk about them on the regular show.
Yeah. So I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Kind of go over the week and see the game script that Garrett's got planned out for us. But overall, a good week. I know we got a lot of things to talk about. Some players producing, some players not. some come back here soon. So it's going to be interesting. And I will see you tomorrow to talk some more Dynasty Fantasy Football.
Adios.